ADS-B outlaws, beware.
The latest on the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash. The military may have just the right approach.
And getting your feet wet at Skyhawk race. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haynes and Alyssa Cobb.
What's an accident that has shocked the sports, entertainment, and aviation worlds? Sunday evening, we learned that helicopter crash had killed basketball great Kobe Bryant and his daughter, along with 7 others, including parents, coaches, young basketball players, and the pilot. And everyone wants to know why.
Right, but as we know from history, it's much too early to have any answers. The NTSB will likely investigate for more than a year before reporting a probable cause of the accident. But here's what we do know right now. The Sikorsky S-76 pilot boarded 8 passengers, including Kobe Bryant, around 9 a.m. Sunday and took off from John Wayne Airport, headed for Camarillo Airport near Bryan's Sports Academy. The METAR at John Wayne showed 4 miles visibility and an overcast at 1,000 feet. The chopper flew along Interstate 5 until reaching Burbank's Class Charlie airspace. Burbank was reporting 2.5 miles visibility and an 1,100-foot overcast.
Burbank helicopter 72 Echo X-ray Sikorsky helicopter approaching the zoo for the 101 westbound transition 800.
November 72 Echo X-ray Burbank Tower, Burbank altimeter 3019 Burbank Class Charlie surface area is IFR, say intentions.
If we can maintain special VFR, asking for special VFR transition on the 101 westbound 2 Echo.
November 2 Echo X-ray, hold outside Burbank Class Charlie airspace. I have an aircraft going around. November 72 Echo X-ray, you can expect a few minutes. I got another aircraft inbound on the final.
Okay, we'll hold outside right here about downtown Glendale 2 Echo X-ray.
The helicopter orbited for 15 minutes before getting cleared through the Burbank and Van Nuys airspace.
X-ray for your transition to Camarillo, did you just want to follow the 118?
118, and then we'll loop around Van Nuys to catch the 101 2 Echo X-ray.
Number 2 Echo X-ray, roger.
The Sikorsky follows the 118 and the 101 freeways at 1,400 feet. The pilot says he's in VFR conditions, and then once past Van Nuys, he calls SoCal approach for flight following.
2 Echo X-ray, you're still too low level for flight following at this time.
The helicopter is below radar coverage. He follows the 101 through a canyon and then makes a turn to the south. The aircraft climbs and then, according to the NTSB, descends at more than 2,000 feet per minute. Area residents say it was very foggy at the time of the crash. The NTSB says the debris field indicates the helicopter hit the ground at a high energy state. And as we know now, all 9 on board died.
That's so sad. Some of the news media have been making a big deal out of the special VFR clearance, saying the pilot was cleared to fly in worse than normal conditions. Others are keying on the report that the Sheriff's Department helicopters weren't flying that morning. But special VFR isn't unsafe, and it's commonly used by both fixed-wing and helicopters in the LA basin. Special VFR is simply a clearance to fly in controlled airspace and stay clear of the clouds. Fixed-wing pilots need 1 mile visibility. Helicopters just need to be able to see the ground.
It's not inherently dangerous. Special VFR operations is a good tool for pilots and controllers alike, using it like everything else in aviation in the right circumstance with the right tools and not using it for beyond what it was made to do. And in this case, the pilot wasn't doing that. He was trying to transit Class Charlie and Delta airspace and get a special VFR to do that. And that's what he did. And you can hear on the recording, as soon as he left the Van Nuys airspace, they verified that he can maintain VFR, which now means back to normal VFR, not special VFR.
And what about the helicopter safety record? Despite their greater complexity and difficulty to fly, the helicopter accident rate is not higher than other types of aircraft. That, according to the AOPA Air Safety Institute's NORL report. Multi-engine helicopters like the Sikorsky S-76 had just 2 accidents in charter operations in 2016, the most current and complete data. Neither accident was fatal.
Commercial helicopters have a very good safety record. Helicopters in general have a good safety record. It matches roughly what we have in fixed-wing operations for general aviation. We haven't seen the improvement over the last 10 years in helicopters that we'd like to see. They've been relatively steady, but it's been pretty low.
You know, Tom, high-profile accidents like this, it always calls into question the safety of aviation.
It does. We received a lot of media calls here at AOPA with reporters asking for questions. We did a lot of things on background to help educate the media about what Special VFR is all about, how it's a tool, as Richard says, for pilots to use in certain circumstances. So doing what we can to sort of tamp down all that speculation and also speculation about the accident cause itself. And as always, let's wait for the NTSB experts to give us the final look at what really happened here.
That's right.
Well, it's just coincidental that the Helicopter Association International's Heli Expo is in Southern California this week. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop joins us now from Anaheim. Paul, the Kobe Bryant accident is sure making waves throughout the aviation world. What's the mood there in the LA basin?
Hey Tom, it's pretty somber. We're seeing a lot of outpouring of grief and support from people here in the Southland. Now, I landed at LAX at about the same time as the accident and came through that same fog and overcast. It was very dense. Here's a snapshot I took on approach. This was just a few miles away and within a few minutes of the accident. Now, as news broke of the crash, people were stunned. Memorials popping up everywhere. This one is just outside Staples Center. We've seen billboards all over the place with Kobe Bryant's face and his name and remembering him. His basketball career meant a lot to the people of the Southland, and many of them are sharing their outpourings of grief. Now, here at Heli Expo, it's a little bit more business as usual, but obviously pilots are kind of shaken up that an experienced aviator in a very capable machine could wind up in an accident like that somehow. And so people are trying to use this as a moment to remember to keep safety front of mind. Now, safety is a big part of HAI Heli Expo, and in fact, they have a lot of seminars and safety programming that's all free to anyone who wants to attend.
We have some of the top people in the industry presenting classes, and because we know that this is important, we actually make all of our safety courses available for free to anybody who comes in. People don't have to register for the show, they don't have to register to get out on the show floor, they can just take the safety classes for free. So there might be classes about flying in a wire environment or flying when fatigued, things like that we just want the information out there.
Now, safety content, a huge part of Heli Expo, but it's far from the only thing. Some major news and some cutting-edge technology is the big story from here inside the Anaheim Convention Center.
Heli Expo is hundreds of thousands of square feet of all things Rotorcraft.
We annually anticipate about $2 billion worth of business going on one of these shows, and we've already had a pretty major acquisition.
Italian aviation giant Leonardo buys Swiss company Copter. Copter and their SH-09 is the first clean sheet design upstart in the helicopter space in decades. The $185 million deal will add to Leonardo's existing conglomerate of designs, with company officials saying the Copter long light single machine complementing their existing offerings well.
We believe it will be the brand new single engine of the future with really unique capability, brand new design, and will really open to Leonardo the door for a lot of opportunities.
Copter will remain an autonomous business unit, but it's not all mergers and acquisitions. Just a few feet over, one of the more popular booths. VRM Switzerland showing off their full-motion virtual reality Robinson 22 and Copter SH-09 simulators. European certification is underway with U.S. certification to follow.
We were lucky to get a fantastic innovation partnership contract signed with EASA in the European European countries where we are right now in the middle of certification process.
In a future edition, we'll dive deeper into the device and see why I should probably stick to fixed wing. But speaking of cool, check out the Airbus ACH-130 Aston Martin edition. It's got custom paint and interior, and it is very 007.
Well, obviously, I found out you don't use 172 muscle memory for a R-22, but there's a lot of really exciting things going on, a buzz of new technologies, and it's really cool to kind of get out of the fixed-wing world and see what's going on here in Rotorcraft, guys.
Hey, Paul, thanks for that. But I think that Aston Martin interior, that's all you, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay?
I think I'd look very, very good in it.
You absolutely would. That is definitely your style.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the reports on what's happening in the helicopter world, Paul. We'll look forward to hearing more next week.
Well, the Helicopter Association Convention celebrates all vertical flight, and there are some new flying machines becoming more evident on the show floor, and they may very well be the future of flight. Urban air mobility is an integral part of HAI this year. The idea is so well accepted as the way aviation is going, the class of machines doesn't even have its own area. UAMs are just another part of the show. One of the highlights is the Airbus Vahana. The A-propeller eVTOL is a personal air vehicle prototype. It just completed its flight test program, and the company plans to use lessons learned from this machine in future urban air mobility projects.
And Airbus Helicopters is working on another demonstrator called City Airbus, which is a larger vehicle, different architecture. It's a multi-copter. It's a 4-passenger vehicle, and they're currently going through their flight test campaign. And the idea is to use all the technical lessons learned from these two demonstrators to then work on the next generation vehicle.
The Vahana has a range of 27 miles, and it cruises at 120 miles per hour.
Enstrom Helicopter is celebrating its 60th anniversary at HAI. A chopper there in special livery for the event. The company formed in 1959 by mining engineer R.J. Rudy Enstrom on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. A lot of history at that company. Wow, they've had a lot of different owners over the years, and it's really fascinating what all they've done.
But a mainstay in the helicopter industry.
Yep, for training in particular.
Yep. Well, when we come back, flying a seaplane at Skyhawk rates.
And the military's favorite approach might be right for you too. AOPA Live this week continues in a moment.
There are many important things to consider before purchasing an aircraft. Let the experts at Aerospace Reports help guide you through the process. We combine expert knowledge with our long-standing commitment to personalized customer service to perfect your transaction. Learn more at aerospacereports.com.
Welcome back. The FAA is making it clear that intentional violation of the ADS-B regulations will be costly. AOPA has learned that FAA has just revised its inspector's handbook, and under the new rules, there won't be any tolerance for intentionally flying without ADS-B operating in airspace where the regs require it.
They're going to use the same approach that they do for other intentional falsification issues, which is revocation of your pilot certificates.
But that's for intentionally turning off ADS-B. Equipment failure, unintentional entry into so-called rule airspace. Our FAA contacts say they still want to work toward voluntary compliance and education.
Well, what I recommend to pilots is, first of all, be sure that your ADS-B system is working the way it should. Understand the airspace where you need to be using ADS-B, and understand how you need to be operating your ADS-B. There is a lot of guidance on the FAA website to be able to help you, and you can also call our PIC center, and they'll be able to answer questions there. Beyond that, make sure that your ADS-B system is in good operating condition, just like the rest of your aircraft. And if there is a problem, be sure to call our legal services plan, and we can help walk through any circumstance that may arise that involves your ADS-B system not working, or perhaps entering airspace where you needed to have ADS-B but didn't realize it. And we can work with you through those circumstances and help you deal with the FAA.
While pilots can turn off ADS-B in formation flights, we're currently advocating for a change in the FARs allowing a pilot to turn off ADS-B out in areas where it's not required by regulation. You can do that now with your transponder. But the current FAR 91-215 requires ADS-B to be turned on all the time if the aircraft is equipped with it. Well, Tom, I talked to Rune Duke, our ADS-B advocacy expert, and he stressed that the good news is the FAA is taking an educational approach.
Right, it's great to hear.
Yeah, if there is an aircraft that's non-compliant, they're going to reach out to the pilot so that you could get it fixed and provide some education. And we know that there were about 10,000 non-compliant systems flying out there, and AOPA and the FAA are working closely and also with manufacturers to really make sure that this works. We know there are going to be some hiccups, and it's a big educational push.
It is, and but as Justine points out, very little tolerance for those who are doing it
Yes.
on purpose or trying to escape from a situation, something like that. Don't do that, because that can really lead to a revocation, which is very serious business.
Yes.
Okay. Well, speaking of violations, hey, you want to see an F-16, F-15, maybe a Black Hawk helicopter up close and personal? Well, we have a couple of opportunities for you. First, this Sunday in the Miami area, yep, it's Super Bowl 54, and there will be a TFR. Bust the TFR, and you'll very quickly find a fighter, maybe a helicopter on your left wing, and hey, folks, they have guns. Oh, and the president will be in Florida this weekend as well, so there's another TFR around Palm Beach. So, as we've said before, check NOTAMs, okay? But if you'd like to see those military aircraft in the air in the mid-Atlantic area, well, you'll have to wait until Tuesday for that, because, well, the president will be back in Washington for his State of the Union address to Congress, and the highly restricted airspace around the nation's capital will have even more limits on flights. So again, check NOTAMs. Or you might be requested to land at an airport like Frederick, where we are. We've seen that before, and guess what? It's really not a request.
But one thing the military pilots might request is an overhead approach. An overhead approach is an alternative to a traditional rectangular pattern. You might overhear a request for one at your local airport. AOPA Pilot Editor-at-Large Dave Hirschman shows us what an overhead looks like and how to do one.
An overhead approach is a proven way to get a formation flight on the ground quickly with very few radio calls. The lead pilot handles communication for the entire formation, so the other pilots typically stay silent.
Frederick Yankee 22591, flight at 2 with Zulu, 10 miles to the west, request in the overhead.
Deck 22591 in flight, Frederick Tower, report a 5-mile initial for runway 30.
The tower controller tells him to report a 5-mile initial or a straight in for the landing runway.
Deck 591, flight turning inbound at 5, requesting about tampering.
Yeah, 591, you can expect a left brake, report the numbers.
The tower controller tells the lead pilot to report crossing over the runway threshold or report the numbers and expect a left brake.
591, flight numbers to the brake.
Deck 591, left brake is approved, runway 30, cleared to land.
591 in flight, cleared to land, left brake.
Each pilot makes a sharp 180-degree turn to the downwind, configures for landing, and then makes another 180-degree turn to final. The airplanes typically land about 10 seconds apart, and since it's a formation, one airplane doesn't have to clear the runway before the next one lands. Dave Hirschman, AOPA Live.
Overhead approaches can be flown at towered or non-towered fields and are a fun and challenging way to arrive at the airport. And I've got to say, they are fun. I've flown with Dave on some formation training flights, and that overhead approach, it does take the work down for the other pilot. All you got to do is focus on the other airplane and configure your aircraft.
Yep, it does work pretty well, but it's a little, if you've not done it before, it's a little weird to see it happening, and you're a little concerned about what's really happening out there if you're used to flying just a square pattern. But they can be helpful, particularly for formations, as Dave said. Well, hey, a new aircraft took to the skies last weekend. The Boeing 777X flew for the first time. Boeing says the latest iteration of the 777 design will be the largest, most fuel-efficient twin-engine airliner flying. Boeing expects to put the 777X into service next year. It achieves greater efficiency with a very long wing, so long, in fact, it needs to fold up at the tips to taxi at many airports. I think the last time that Boeing had an airplane with folding tips, it was probably landing on an aircraft carrier.
Well, last week, Tom and I talked about his article on the high cost of aviation insurance. Rates are increasing anywhere from 10 to 100%, and it's becoming harder to find insurance. Tom explained what's going on in the insurance market. There's been a lot of interest in that article. Tom had a chance to explain more on the Airplane Geeks podcast.
But it's really related to the global insurance industry and all the things that we see in the news, hurricanes, tsunamis, fires, think of Australia, and very expensive for the insurance community. And then you throw in a couple of airline accidents like the 737 MAX. So all those things coming together means that the insurance industry is suddenly very much under the gun to protect their reserves that they use to pay out in cases, big cases like this. And so they've really tightened the market. It's called a hardening of the market.
You can find the Airplane Geeks podcast at the URL there on your screen. Well, one way to mitigate the increasing cost of insurance is join a flying club to share the costs.
AOPA technical editor Jill Tallman has the story about a flying club that uses affordable SeaRey amphibs to splash around in Lakeland, Florida.
We started the No Limits Flying Club as a way to make seaplane flying accessible. So in doing that, we looked at all of the barriers to entry for a new seaplane pilot. Aircraft ownership is costly and intimidating if you've never owned an airplane before. Joining a traditional equity club can be problematic, so we went with a non-equity club so that way we can limit the exposure to our members. All we ask is a 1-year membership commitment from them. Our goal is to try to keep our hourly rates comparable to a 172 rental in a local area. And so far we've been able to do that.
I work for an airline, and the difference between this kind of fun flying and that kind of flying is night and day. So I love my job, but everything's very regimented and planned out. This kind of flying is totally different. We're landing on land, we're landing on water, we're landing on rivers. We've got currents, we've got boats, we've got all kinds of other things to deal with, and it's challenging and fun, very different. Flying seaplanes, I think it's a lot of people's dream. When they're young and building time, they may think, well, why would I spend my money on a seaplane rating if I need to be working on my multi or my ATP? So it takes a back seat. But we're hoping to remedy that by offering this club.
We looked at the economics of seaplane ownership and rental, and we went with SLSA, and we looked at the SeaRey specifically. It's a US-based company. They've been building them for close to 30 years right here in Florida. So from an operational perspective, support is outstanding. Maintenance services are available at the factory. We're going to be through the training pipeline and become a service center. Or the current iteration of SeaRey, the Sea Hull, and the way that it's designed, it's very forgiving on the water. I like that it's sporty and responsive. It's very light and agile in the air. It truly is a pleasure to fly. The airplane will burn 5.5 gallons an hour. When we go out and splash around on the water, we're probably going to be in the 3 to 4 gallon range. It burns 91 octane at a minimum with up to 10% ethanol, so we use premium auto fuel. We have our initial location in the St. Louis area in St. Charles. It's just northwest of the city. And then we opened this location here in Lakeland this past month. We're hoping to have a nationwide and maybe one day international network of locations. To help mitigate some of the human factors issues, we've worked out a deal with SeaRey that all of our airplanes will be identical. So that way it's just a change of scenery for the pilot. Our booking is online, so you can go on and pick your location, pick your airplane, date, time. Our members will get a verbal local area brief when they show up to a new area, you know, the do's and don'ts, hazards, places to go get lunch, and so on. We really try to take the barriers out of the equation for people in an effort to get people out on the water and in the air having fun.
Read more about the No Limits Flying Club in the February issue of AOPA Pilot Magazine. It is cold here today, and that Florida flying looks really inviting. And then to be on the water like that in an airplane, a seaplane, oh, that'd be so much fun.
I was just thinking the same thing watching that package. I'm ready to go. And that's our show for this week. We really appreciate all of your comments and likes. You can talk back to us at the email address there on your screen.
Yeah, we will. And we'll be back next Thursday with another edition of AOPA Live this week. Till then, blue skies.